matter what you want to do in life, life takes Visa.
We've all seen them. The makeup.
In the fall of 1996, Nashville, Tennessee is embroiled in a puzzling mystery.
Janet March vanished more than 2 months ago. Police say her husband, Perry March, remains the prime suspect.
From the day that she was reported missing, this town has been consumed with the disappearance of Janet March.
There were so many theories about what happened to Janet March, whether anything had happened to Janet March. There were Janet March sightings.
Somebody had seen Janet at a truck stop out in Smyrna, and which was just absurd. I mean, if Janet were alive, she was not hanging out at the truck stop in Smyrna.
Suddenly, there were more sightings of Janet March than there were of Elvis. The young mother's tragic disappearance had officially turned into tabloid tripe. Quite a departure from the fairy tale romance that started the whole thing off.
Janet and Perry had met at the University of Michigan. Much like Janet's parents had met at the University of Michigan before them, this was the man that she wanted to marry. And the Levines were very much in favor. Wanted to be a lawyer just like Larry, wanted to go to law school just where Mr. Levine did. This was the quote-unquote nice Jewish boy who had a bright future.
As Larry Levine has said, that if his daughter loved Perry March, that was good enough for him.
Janet's father, Larry Levine, was a wealthy and successful lawyer. He and his wife Carolyn were respected members of Nashville's close-knit Jewish community.
They were in the upper echelon of that society. Larry Levine was a very powerful and influential insurance defense attorney.
In 1986, Janet and Perry were married, and Perry's lifestyle improved dramatically.
The March family didn't have the money of the Levine family, and nowhere near. So clearly, economically, was it a step up? Sure. Perry went to them for everything. I mean, everything was paid for by the Levines.
Carolyn and Lawrence Levine funded his education at Vanderbilt University Law School. They paid for his books, his living expenses. The Levines really helped him have the lifestyle that he had here in Nashville.
I think they loved him and treated him as a son, basically.
By 1992, Perry and Janet had 2 young children, a boy, Sammy, and a girl named Sephora.
Well, they seemed to have it all. Were well accepted in the community and just seemed to be like a perfect life.
Perry became a successful attorney, and Janet's career as an artist and illustrator was blooming. In 1995, the young family moved into a sprawling 5,000-square-foot mansion in one of Nashville's most expensive neighborhoods.
They lived in Janet's dream home, and she worked on every last detail to make sure that this house was absolutely beautiful.
But 9 years into their marriage, just a few months before Janet disappeared, the picture was not as rosy.
The two were fighting. They were fighting so much. They were fighting in front of her parents, and it had concerned them.
Everyone around him, close to him and Janet, knew the marriage was in serious trouble.
Police discovered that when it came to Perry's career, he had covered up a chilling secret.
Perry had worked at one of Nashville's largest and most prestigious law firms, Bassberry and Sims, and he was forced out of that firm.
A female paralegal at the company had received 3 mysterious letters.
She had no idea who was sending the letters, and these letters were sexually very explicit.
After an internal investigation at the firm, they discovered that it was Perry March who was sending this woman the letters. He agreed to pay her some money to avoid a lawsuit. It was about $25,000.
And then he left that firm and went to work for the Levines.
Larry Levine never knew the real reason why Perry left his previous firm, but apparently Janet had discovered her husband's dirty secret.
They were gathering up her belongings, and someone at the house found a manila envelope, and it had Janet March's name on it, and it had copies of the letters that were sent to the paralegal years earlier, along with a condom wrapper. The police believe that Janet March discovered what happened with Perry March at Bass, Berry & Sims the day before she disappeared.
I believe that she threatened him with divorce, and, when she looked at Perry and said, "I'm going to divorce you," it was a lot more than "I'm just going to leave you." Perry was faced with the prospect of losing a standard of living that without her he had never known, and maybe without her he could never even possibly achieve. And he was desperate.
Investigators are confident they now have Perry's motive.
The police believe that the discovery of what really happened at the law firm sparked a violent argument that ended in her death.
In November, 2 months after she disappeared, Janet's family decides to accept the unthinkable and holds a memorial service for her.
I think the amount of people here today reflects how much she'll be missed. It's hard for me to imagine that he would have anything to do with it, but I guess there are some unanswered questions.
Perry refuses to attend Janet's memorial, claiming it's too soon to give up on her return.
There is no evidence that anything has happened to Janet, except that she is not here. I would like to be the first person to know if something has happened to my wife.
It was one thing for Perry to steer clear of the service, but to keep Sammy and Zipporah from attending their mother's memorial was just disgraceful. The war between the Levines and their son-in-law was on.
March disappeared. The investigation is at a standstill, but the battle between her husband and her parents is just heating up.
Well, the husband of a missing Forest Hills woman was in court this morning trying to gain access to some of her money.
Perry actually was the first one who went into court over the money.
Perry claims he needs money from Janet's estate for child support, but the Levines want to take care of their grandchildren themselves and launch a series of lawsuits.
There were custody battles and visitation battles, lawsuits flung back and forth.
I would hate to think what Mr. Levine's legal fees were, just civilly.
Every few weeks, something would be happening about the money or the children, in addition to, where's Janet?
If the Levines were upset that Perry had brought their grandchildren to Chicago, his next move would leave them devastated. Right in the middle of all their legal wrangling, Perry packed up the kids and headed for the border.
Perry wound up going to live in Mexico in a little town called Ajijic, which is a resort town near Guadalajara, and his father lived there.
Perry's father, Arthur March, a tough ex-Army lieutenant colonel and retired pharmacist, had already been enjoying his life in Mexico for several years.
He's a ex-military type. He claims to have been in the Green Beret, Special Forces, that type of thing. He fancies himself an expert in many, many things.
He's got a lot of blustery, big talk, but when it comes right down to it, he's just kind of a lovable old curmudgeon.
Over the next few years, Perry continues to give interviews to the Nashville media.
Hopefully one day we discover what happened to Janet, and all of this will be an interesting story in my life.
Though Perry maintains Janet is alive, he has no trouble moving on.
He remarries down there, and he marries a woman named Carmen, who is really good looking.
She had 3 children. Together they had a child. He continued to do some sort of practice down there. He claimed to be an attorney.
Perry believes his troubles are fading into the past. But over 2,000 miles away, the Levines press on with their custody litigation.